Welcome to the Madison Miller Podcast. Today is Tuesday, September 27th, 2022. Today I'm going to recap last night's Monday Night Football game between the Cowboys and the Giants. We'll go over the Major League Baseball games from yesterday and look ahead to today's games. We have a Major League Soccer game to talk about that's taking place tonight. NFL Power Rankings as Week 3 comes to a close. Dance to make the stars recap, news and notes, and best bet. We'll start with Monday Night Football. It was an ugly game that actually turned into a decent game, unlike the 49er Bronco game from Sunday night, as the Cowboys come out on top by a score of 23-16 over the New York Giants. As the Cowboys go to 2-1, the Giants drop to 2-1. Cooper Rush wasn't terrible, 21-31, 215 yards and a touchdown, and Daniel Jones, 20-37, 196 yards, and the game-sealing interception. Saquon Barkley was outstanding. Tony Pollard outplayed Ezekiel Elliott. Sterling Shepard had a non-contact injury at the end of the game on that play that resulted in the Jones interception. Hopefully he'll be okay. There's rumors about a torn ACL, which would be very unfortunate for him. And CeeDee Lamb had an excellent game for Dallas as well. Week 4 will get underway on Thursday, where the Dolphins will take on the Bengals in Cincinnati. And that will be a fabulous game. That did not look like a great game before the year. That looks like a great game now. So I'm looking forward to that game. All right, now I'll move on to Major League Baseball. We'll go over the results from yesterday and look ahead to a busy day today. Pirates over the Reds 8-3, so best bet was a winner. Pittsburgh 57-97, Cincinnati 60-94. Getting the win for Pittsburgh was Yohan Ramirez, and getting the loss for Cincinnati was Derek Law. Braves over the Nationals 8-0. The Braves are 96-58. Washington's 53-100. As the Braves get within a game of the Mets. Bryce Adler the win and Corey Abbott the loss. Blue Jays over the Yankees 3-2 in 10 innings on a walk-off single by Vladimir Guerrero Jr. as the Blue Jays fend off the Yankees. Another day, so the Yankees can't clinch the AL East yet. Toronto's 87-67. New York is 94-59. Getting the win was Tim Meza, and the loss was Clark Schmidt. Orioles over the Red Sox 14-8. The Orioles are 80-73, Boston 72-81, so Boston cannot have a winning season. Getting the win for Baltimore was Spencer Watkins, and Connor Seabold the loss for Boston. Much busier day today. 6 o'clock, you have the Rays with the Guardians, Corey Kluber and Shane Bieber. Interesting pitching matchup. Could this be a round 1 preview if the Rays drop to 6? Round 1 preview, maybe. Guardians minus 156, Rays plus 134 or 132, over under 6.5, overs minus 118, unders minus 104. Rays plus 1.5 is minus 178. Guardians minus 1.5 is plus 146. So Corey Kluber back in Cleveland too. I'm taking the over. They laid out this line like it was Max Scherzer against Shane Bieber, but it's Corey Kluber who is not as good as he used to be. 6:30, Reds at the Pirates, Hunter Green and Mitch Keller. Pirates minus 120, Reds plus 102, over under 7, overs minus 112, unders minus 108. Reds plus 1.5 is minus 215, Pirates minus 1.5 is plus 176. I'm going with the over again in this game. Next up is the Royals at the Tigers, meaningless game. Zach Greinke and Joey Wentz. Tigers minus 112, Royals minus 104, over under 7.5, minus 110 trade. Royals minus 1.5 is plus 164, Tigers plus 1.5 is minus 200. Royals favored on the run line, Tigers favored on the money line. I think that the Tigers are underpriced, so I'm going to take them at minus 112 against the Royals. 7 o'clock, you have the Braves at the Nationals, Kyle Muller and Paolo Espino. Braves minus 20, Nats plus 184, over under 8.5, overs minus 120, and there's even money. Braves minus 1.5 is minus 128, Nats plus 1.5 is plus 106. I'm taking the Nats at plus 1.5 at plus 106 on the run line. Yankees, Blue Jays, Jamison Tyone and Jose Barrios. Yanks minus 112, Blue Jays minus 104, over under 8, overs minus 108, unders minus 112. Yanks minus 1.5 is plus 142, Blue Jays plus 1.5 is minus 172. Yankees slight favorites on the money line. They're favored on the run line too. Same thing here as in the Royals-Tigers game. Yankees undervalued as a favorite, so I'm taking the Yankees at minus 112 to bounce back and clinch the AL East tonight after their 7-game winning streak was snapped yesterday. Orioles-Red Sox. Kyle Bradish and Michael Wacha. Red Sox minus 126, Orioles plus 108, over under 9, overs minus 105, unders minus 114. Orioles plus 1.5 is minus 188, Red Sox minus 1.5 is plus 155. I'm going with the under. Michael Wacha has actually been pretty good for Boston this year. Marlins, Mets, Pablo Lopez, and Carlos Carrasco. Mets minus 15, Marlins plus 180, over under 7, overs minus 105, unders minus 115. Marlins plus 1.5 is minus 128, Mets minus 1.5 is plus 106. I'm going with the over because Pablo Lopez really hasn't been that great post the All-Star break. White Sox, Twins at 7:30. Lance Lynn and Bailey Ober. White Sox minus 126. Twins plus 108. Over under 7. Overs plus 102. Unders minus 124. White Sox minus 1.5 is plus 140. Twins plus 1.5 is minus 170. I'm going with the Twins as a home underdog. Plus 108. They should be favored in this game over the disappointing White Sox. Phillies, Cubs. Early time for Wrigley. Zach Wheeler and Marcus Stroman. Phillies minus 172. Cubs plus 144. Over under 6.5. Overs minus 120. Unders minus 102. Phillies minus 1.5 is plus 105. Cubs plus 1.5 is minus 126. For this game, I'm going to go with over 3.5 first half total runs at minus 106. I actually like that one a lot. Cardinals, Brewers. Miles Mikolas and Adrian House are Cardinals on the verge of clinching the NL Central. They're a minus 112 favorite. Brewers are minus 104, over on their 8.5. Overs minus 104, unders minus 118. Cardinals minus 1.5 is plus 140. Brewers plus 1.5 is minus 170. Same scenario in the Yankee game as in here. I'm taking the Cardinals as a short favorite at minus 112. Diamondbacks, Astros at 8. Zach Davies and Lance McCullers Jr. Astros minus 235. D-backs plus 194. Over under 8. Overs minus 104. Unders minus 118. D-backs plus 1.5 is minus 111. Astros minus 1.5 is minus 108. I'm taking the D-backs plus 1.5 at minus 111. 9:30 A's Angels, James Kaprielian and Patrick Sandoval. Angels minus 205, A's plus 172, over under 8, overs minus 118, unders minus 104. A's plus 1.5 is minus 115, Angels minus 1.5 is minus 104. I'm taking the A's plus 1.5 at minus 115. Dodgers, Padres, Tyler Anderson, Blake Snell. Padres are favored, minus 110, Dodgers minus 106, over under 8, overs minus 1. Over under change to 7.5 on me on the dime. Overs minus 120, unders minus 102, Dodgers minus 1.5 is plus 142, Padres plus 1.5 is minus 272. This might be the exception to the rule in terms of going with the underdog on the road because the Padres need the games if they want to clinch. So I'm going to take the Padres at minus 110. But you could argue the same thing for the Blue Jays against the Yankees. But the Yankees have an AL East to clinch. The Dodgers have everything clinched. Rangers, Mariners, Jesse Tinoco and Robbie Ray. Mariners minus 205. Rangers plus 172. Over under 7.5. Overs minus 102. Unders minus 120. Rangers plus 1.5 is minus 125. Mariners minus 1.5 is plus 104. I'm taking a Mariners run line. Minus 1.5 is plus 104. They're 93.9% to win this game, according to ESPN Analytics. 93.9. How are they plus money on the run line? At 9:45, the Rockies at the Giants. Herman Marquez and Logan Webb. Giants minus 190, Rockies plus 160, over under 7, minus 110 each way. Rocks plus 1.5 is minus 134. Giants minus 1.5 is plus 112. I'm going with another run line. I'm going Giants minus 1.5 at plus 112. All right, we have a Major League Soccer game tonight to talk about. It is at 10 o'clock tonight. Seattle's hosting Cincinnati. Cincinnati right now is 6th in the East. They need the games to clinch because Miami and Columbus are only 3 back of them. Atlanta's 5 back. But I think everybody else is out of it. And then Seattle is 6 back of the postseason, but they're still the Sounders. And they're playing better of late. I would think Seattle's favored in this game. I'm trying to pull up the odds. So Seattle's plus 125 at home. Cincinnati's plus 190. Draw plus 230. I'm going to go with the draw here at plus 230. Seattle's playing a lot better, but Cincinnati needs the games just as much. So I'm going with the draw at plus 230 in this one. And then this afternoon, we have U.S. men's national team facing off against Saudi Arabia on Fox Sports 1 at 2 o'clock. They're coming off the loss to Japan, who drew today with Ecuador. So Team USA is a minus 120 road favorite. Saudi Arabia is plus 320, draw plus 220. I think USA is overvalued a little bit. So instead, I'm going to go over 2.5 goals at plus 110 for this game. All right, now I'm going to do NFL power rankings for today as week 3 closes. No theme to this one, just going to be like going over what each team has done so far. Number 32 is the Houston Texans. They're 0-2-1, coming off a loss at the end against the Bears. Next up for the Texans, they host the banged-up Chargers. Number 31 is the New York Jets. They're 1-2 on the season. They're coming off the loss against the Bengals. They had the win over the Browns in week 2. In week 1, they lost at home to the Ravens. And Texans week 1 tied the Colts and then lost at Denver. Coming up for the Jets, they are at Pittsburgh. I mean, could it be Zach Wilson against Kenny Pickett? Maybe. Number 30 is the Washington Commanders are 1-2 in the season. They're coming off the ugly loss against the Eagles at home, which it felt like an Eagle home game. And then the start of the year, they beat the Jaguars, which looks like a good win right now, and a fluky win. And they lost at the Lions. Coming up for the Commanders, they are at Dallas. Number 29 is the Seattle Seahawks. They are coming off a loss at home against the Falcons. Prior to that, they knocked off Denver in week 1 and then lost to the 49ers in week 2. Coming up for Seattle, they play... Who does the Seahawks play this week? I can't think. I know it's not the Cardinals. It's not the Panthers. I don't think they play anybody in their division. They don't. And I think they're on the road, too. Oh, they're at the Lions. Number 28, the Tennessee Titans. They're 1-2 on the season, coming off their first win of the year at home over the Raiders. Prior to that, they lost at home against the Giants and then got blown out in Buffalo against the Bills. Coming up for Tennessee at Indianapolis. Number 27 is the Chicago Bears. They are 2-1 on the season. This is probably the worst 2-1 team I've ever seen. They beat The Texans last week got a last-second field goal, and they beat the 49ers in week 1. They lost at the Packers week 2. Coming up for them, they're at MetLife Stadium. And what is a winnable game at the Giants for them, I think. Number 26, the Atlanta Falcons. They are 1-2 on the season. They're coming off their first win of the year at Seattle. Prior to that, they lost at the Rams in week 2, and in week 1 lost at home against the Saints. Coming up, they host the Browns in what is a winnable game. Number 25, the New York Football Giants. They're 2-1 in the year. Second worst 2-1 team in the league. Probably the second worst 2-1 team ever, arguably. But you could have said that about the Seahawks if they beat the Falcons, too. But yeah, they're 2-1. Give credit where credit's due. They're coming off the loss last night to the Cowboys. Prior to that, they beat the Titans in week 1 and beat the Panthers in week 2. Coming up, they host the Bears and a possibility where they can go 3-1. Number 24 is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're 1-2 on the season. They're coming off a loss on Thursday Night Football against the Browns. Prior to that, week 1, they beat the Bengals. In week 2, they lost at home against the Patriots. Coming up, they host the Jets in a get-right spot. Number 23, the New England Patriots. They're 1-2 on the season, coming off a loss against the Ravens, in which they were competitive in. And they prior to that, they lost at Miami and then beat the Steelers in Pittsburgh. And coming up for New England, they go to Green Bay to face the Packers. Number 22, the Arizona Cardinals. They're 1-2 on the year. They're coming off a home loss against the Rams. Prior to that, they lost badly at home against the Chiefs, and then they beat the Raiders in Las Vegas. Coming up for them, they are at the Panthers, who are my number 21 team on this list. They are 1-2 in the year, coming off their first win of the year at home against the Saints. And prior to that, they lost at the Giants in week 2, and in week 1, they lost at home against the Browns. And like I said, coming up for them, they host the Cardinals. It's a 4 o'clock game, too, which is different for the Panthers. Number 20 is the Indianapolis Colts. They're 1-2 in the year, coming off their first win at home over the Chiefs. Their 2 losses were that ugly loss against the Jaguars, which might not be that bad of a loss looking back. And their other loss was, it was a tie. They're not 1-2. They're 1-1. And then they tied with the Texans. Coming up for the Colts, they host the Titans in a very winnable game. Number 19, the Las Vegas Raiders. They're 0-3 on the year. They lost to the Titans last week. They lost to the Cardinals in week 2. That was a terrible loss. And then they lost to the Chargers. Coming up for the Raiders, it's so weird to have a winless team this high in the power rankings 3 weeks in, but here we are. Because the Raiders probably should be 2-1. And if not 1-2. And coming up for the Raiders, a very winnable game at home against the Broncos. Number 18 is the Detroit Lions. They're 1-2 on the season, coming off a very rough loss at Minnesota against the Vikings. Prior to that, they beat the Commanders at home, and then they lost at home to the Eagles. Coming up for the Lions, they host the Seahawks, and an excellent spot for them to get to 2-2 on the year. Number 17 is the New Orleans Saints. They're 1-2 on the season, kind of off the loss against the Panthers. Before that, they lost at home against the Bucks. And in week 1, they won at Atlanta. You could argue the Saints should be 0-3. Coming up for the Saints, they are in London against the Vikings. Number 16, the San Francisco 49ers. They are 1-2 on the season, coming off the ugly loss on Sunday Night Football against the Broncos. Prior to that, they beat the Seahawks at home, and then they lost at the Bears in week 1. That was a terrible loss. And then coming up for the Niners, they host the Rams on Monday Night Football. in a spot that they need. Number 15 is the Los Angeles Chargers. They are 1-2 on the season, coming off that dreadful home loss against the Jaguars, in which Justin Herbert shouldn't have played. Like I said, they're 1-2 on the year. They lost at home against the Jags. They lost to the Chiefs on Thursday Football in the game which they should have won. And then they beat the Raiders week 1. Coming up for them at the Texans. In an excellent spot to get to 2-2 regardless of who's at quarterback. Number 14 is the Denver Broncos. They're 2-1 on the year. It certainly feels like they're 1-2 or 0-3. But they're 2-1. Coming off the Sunday night win against the 49ers. Prior to that, they knocked off the Texans at home. And in week 1, they lost at Seattle in a game which they should have won. Coming up for Denver, they're at the Raiders. Number 13 is the Dallas Cowboys. They're 2-1 on the season, coming off last night's win over the Giants. They, prior to that, beat the Bengals at home, and then they lost to the Bucs at home. And then coming up for them, hosting the Commanders. Number 12 is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are 2-1 on the season, with a great win at the Chargers, taking advantage of their situation. And then prior to that, they destroyed the Colts. And in week 1, they lost a fluky game to Washington. Coming up for the Jags, they're at Philly. Number 11, the Cleveland Browns. They're 2-1 on the season. Probably should be 3-0, coming off the Thursday night win over the Steelers. They should have beat the Jets in week 2, but they didn't. And then in week 1, they beat the Panthers. So you could argue the Browns should be 1-2. Well, really, you could say they probably are the right record because they should have lost the Panthers but should have beaten the Jets. So, they're 2-1. Coming up for the Browns, they're at Atlanta. Number 10 is the Cincinnati Bengals. They're 1-2 on the year, coming off their first win of the year at home over the Jets. Or, I'm sorry, not at home, at MetLife over the Jets. Coming up for Cincy, they host the Dolphins in a game which is very interesting. And prior to that, they lost at Dallas and they lost at home against the Steelers. Number 9 is the Minnesota Vikings. They are 2-1 on the season, coming off the emotional win over the Lions. Prior to that, they lost at Philly on Monday Night Football, and then they beat the Packers at home, coming up for them against the Saints in London. Number 8, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're 2-1 on the season, coming off the home loss against the Packers. Prior to that, they knocked off the Cowboys in Dallas on Sunday Night Football in week 1 and week 2. They beat the Saints in New Orleans. Coming up for the Bucs, they host the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Oof. Number 7 is the Green Bay Packers. They are 2-1 on the season, coming off the win at Tampa Bay, which was a good win for them. Prior to that, they beat the Bears on Sunday Night Football, and then in week 1, they lost at Minnesota. Coming up for Green Bay, home against New England. Number 6, the Los Angeles Rams. They're 2-1 on the season, coming off the road win at Arizona. Prior to that, they beat the Falcons at home, and they lost bad at home on opening night against the Bills. Coming up for the Rams, they're at the 49ers on Monday Night Football. Number 5 is the Miami Dolphins. They are 3-0 on the season. You could argue they should have lost to the Bills on Sunday with how that game transpired. If anything, the butt punt benefited them. I felt they were lucky to win that game, but 3-0 is 3-0. They, like I said, they knocked off the Bills last week. Week 2, they had that impressive comeback against the Ravens. And in week 1, they knocked off the Patriots. And coming up for Miami, they're at the Bengals on Thursday Night Football with their undefeated record on the line. Number 4 is the Baltimore Ravens. They are 2-1 this season, coming off the win over New England. They had that terrible loss against Miami last week, in which they allowed Tua and the Dolphins to come back, or 2 weeks ago. And then week 1, they knocked off the Jets. Coming up for Baltimore, they host Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Number 3, the Kansas City Chiefs. They're 2-1 on the season, coming off their first loss of the year at Indy. Fluky loss. Prior to that, they knocked off the Chargers on Thursday Night Football. And then week 1, they killed the Cardinals. And then coming up for them, they're at the Buccaneers on Sunday Night Football. Number 2, the Buffalo Bills. They are 2-1 on the season, coming off their first loss of the year at Miami. Prior to that, they destroyed the Titans on Monday Night Football. And then they destroyed the Rams on opening night. Coming up for them, they're at the Ravens. And number 1, the Philadelphia Eagles. They're 3-0 on the season. They've looked like the best team so far. Coming off the win at the Commanders. I know the Commanders are not very good. I get it. But they were very impressive in that game on all ends. And then prior to that, they beat the Vikings, which was a good win. And then prior to that, they beat the Lions, who may not be terrible, in week 1. And coming up for the Eagles, they host the Jacksonville Jaguars, which is all of a sudden looks like a fun game. All right, so after 3 weeks, if you ask me who's had the best win so far, I'd say the Bills have had the best win so far at the Rams on opening night. That is the best win any team has had in terms of opponent. And worst loss in terms of a decent team losing to an inferior team, I'd say the 49ers losing at the Bears in week 1 is the worst loss of the year so far. But in terms of how games played out, best win, Miami at Baltimore, with how they came back, and worst loss, ooh, that's a tough one. I would say the worst loss any team's had so far this year was the Raiders in week 2 at home against the Cardinals, which they allowed the Cardinals to come back. Although you could argue the Browns-Jets was the worst loss, or even the Lions losing at Minnesota last week was the worst loss. But I think that the Raiders should have won that game, and it's just crazy that Arizona came back and won that game. So I say the worst loss was the Raiders losing at home against the Cardinals in week 2. So there you have it, NFL Power Rankings for week 3 as we head into week 4. Dancing with the Stars was last night. We'll recap the episode. So this week was Elvis week. Something interesting happened. Danielle Carr-Gotch tested positive for COVID, so Joseph Baina performed with Alexis Ward instead. So that is very interesting, to say the least. All right, so the order of the performances, as everyone danced to an Elvis song and the rumba was introduced. Jesse and Alan went first. They did the foxtrot routine to Trouble. They scored a 25. Jordan and Brandon did a quick step routine to Hound Dog and got a 27. Sam and Cheryl did a Vinette's Waltz to Heartbreak Hotel and got a 26. Shangela and Gleb did a quick step to Shake, Rattle, and Roll and got a 28. Teresa and Pasha did a jive dance to All Shook Up and got a 23. Daniel and Britt did a jive dance to King Creole and got a 29. Gabby and Val did a Vinette's Waltz dance to Can't Help Falling in Love and got a 32. Vinny and Coco did a quick step dance to Viva Las Vegas and got a 27. Charlie and Mark did a quick step dance to Bossa Nova Baby and got a 32. I'm laughing because Bossa Nova was obviously Tom Bergeron's dance on The Masked Singer, and he used to host Dancing with the Stars, so that's kind of symmetry there. Selma and Sasha did a jive dance to Jailhouse Rock and got a 28. Cheryl and Lewis did a tango dance to A Little Less Conversation and got a 21. Joseph and Alexis did a Vinette's Waltz dance to If I Can Dream and got a 24. Heidi and Artem did a foxtrot dance to Suspicious Minds and got a 28. Trevor and Emma did a rumba dance to Always on My Mind and got a 30. And Wayne and Whitney did a jive dance to Burning Love and got a 32. So the bottom two were Teresa and Pasha and Cheryl and Lewis. So the couple that ultimately survived was Cheryl and Lewis, and Teresa and Pasha went home. Derek and Bruno saved Teresa and Pasha. Carrie Ann saved Cheryl and Lewis. And Len, since the other judges were not unanimous, Len, as the head judge, made the final decision to save Cheryl and Lewis. So ultimately, Teresa and Pasha went home. I personally think Cheryl and Lewis should have went home. I didn't like their routine very much. And they survived. And it's unfortunate for Teresa and Pasha. It should be an interesting show next week. And by the way, the highest scoring routine was a tie, three-way. Wade and Whitney, Charlie and Mark, and Gabby and Val. So some tough competition this week in terms of who scored the highest. All right, now move on to news and notes for today. We'll start in the NFL. Keenan Allen to practice this week, so he's expected to return against the Texans, so that's good news for the Chargers. Dak Prescott hinted a return this Sunday against Washington after getting his stitches removed from his thumb. But then it was reported by USA Today that he's targeting a Week 5 return as he's looking to come back for the Rams game after hinting that he might play against the Commanders. We talked about Sterling Shepard getting carted off with a non-contact injury. That was brutal. Joey Bosa's week to week with the groin injury and could miss some time. But the brutal one for them, Rashawn Slater, out for the season with ruptured biceps tendon. So that is brutal news for the Chargers. And he'll be missed really bad. Mac Jones has a high ankle sprain, as they hope he won't need surgery, but it's hard to imagine he plays Week 4 while he waits for a second opinion. There are some rumors that he might miss the season, but I'm not buying that because I don't know if I trust the source. Myles Garrett was hospitalized after he had minor injuries after a single car crash. And his agent says that they're waiting to learn the extent of injuries and is expecting the hospital to be discharged, which he was. And then it was reported that the cause of the crash was swerving to miss an animal on a wet road. Trent Williams out for a month. Will not need surgery, but requires at least a month of rehab to recover from high ankle sprain. That is brutal for the 49ers. DeAndre Swift has a shoulder sprain, as he's not expected to need surgery, but could miss some time. Tyreek Hill calls out Eli Apple, as he kept the receipts from the AFC Championship game ahead of Thursday Night Football. Obviously, Hill traded from the Chiefs to the Dolphins, and the Dolphins are playing the Bengals. The Buccaneers will evacuate Tampa due to Hurricane Ian, as they'll practice at the Dolphins facility, and the league is evaluating if Bucs Chiefs can play in Tampa on Sunday. That's just not great news. Thoughts and prayers go out to everybody in Florida, by the way. And we're going to see what the ramifications from this will be for both the NFL and college football and Major League Baseball, too, because of the Rays and the Marlins, if Miami gets affected, and Atlanta, because the storm's supposed to go up to Georgia. A funny thing happened yesterday before the game as Jerry Jones had a selfie fail as he needed a little help getting a photo with fans before Monday Night Football. That's really funny. Eli Manning shades Russell Wilson. He goes, should have paid that punter $235 million. As they were talking about that 49ers-Broncos game from 2 nights ago. Major League Baseball, obviously Aaron Judge did not hit his 61st home run last night, but there was somebody that bought an entire section in Toronto's outfield last night for Judge. And he had an interesting sweater last night as Twitter is just ready for his free agency. Aaron Judge is the biggest star to be a free agent in years in Major League Baseball. I mean, years. Albert Pujols, I think, was the last huge star to be in free agency. Right? Matt Carpenter returned possible as the team is hoping to get him back for the end of the regular season, though Aaron Boone says we're still a ways away. Basketball, a lot. Media days were yesterday. James Harden told reporters that the tweet that he lost 100 pounds after detailing his offseason weight loss. Pat Beverly on Lakers Media Day tells a heartwarming story about Russell Westbrook, his new Lakers best friend. And then Russell Westbrook had an interesting quote about his take on the Lakers potentially not wanting him in Los Angeles. And then the Lakers were prepared to trade 2027 and 2029 first-round picks to land Kyrie Irving or Donovan Mitchell. That would have not got them Donovan Mitchell. Come on. Nets Media Day, Kevin Durant talks about how he's happy to be back and his teammates love him and everything, but he still requested to be traded. And Kyrie Irving says that it was awkward and he was close to leaving. So yeah, really weird for the Brooklyn Nets. And then RJ Barrett came out and said that we're going to shock the world. Shock the world how? By winning 50 games, making the conference finals. I think those two scenarios are unlikely. But he's very optimistic. I think there's a better chance of Barrett shocking the world and becoming a top 40 player in the NBA this season than for the Knicks to shock the world, per se. Jay Crowder has a couple of suitors, the Celtics, the Heat, the Mavericks, and the Grizzlies. I really think that the Celtics are the best fit for Crowder. I said it on yesterday's show, and that's where I think he'll land. Odell Beckham Jr. comes out and says that the NFL needs to ban turf after Sterling Shepard's non-contact injury on Monday Night Football. Sticking up for his former teammate. So Andy Katz came out with his college basketball top 30 before the season gets underway. I'm going to go through the list. 1, North Carolina, 2, Gonzaga, 3, Kentucky, 4, UCLA, 5, Kansas, 6, Houston, 7, Indiana, 8, TCU, 9, Duke, 10, Creighton, 11, Baylor, 12, Texas, 13, Arkansas, 14, Illinois, 15, Michigan State, 16, Michigan, 17, Miami, 18, Dayton. That's pretty high for Dayton. 19, Rutgers, 20, San Diego State, 21, Florida, 22, Purdue, 23, USC, 24, Auburn, 25, Wyoming. 26, Villanova. 27, Tennessee. 28, Ohio State. 29, Virginia. 30, Alabama. 31, Arizona. 32, Texas Tech. 33, Xavier. 34, Texas A&M. 35, Iowa. 36, UConn, so top 36. Under consideration, Wisconsin, Providence, St. Mary's, Oregon, Memphis, Oklahoma State, St. Louis, Davidson, St. John's, Iowa State, Florida State, VCU, Loyola Chicago, Notre Dame, West Virginia, Oklahoma. All right, so a little college basketball early on to talk on the show. I thought that Wyoming was ridiculously high. I guess they're like the darling of the Mountain West. I haven't really gotten much into college basketball. Andy's somebody that is one of the best in the business covering that sport. I trust him. I trust John Rothstein, Gary Parrish, Matt Norlander, Sam Vecini. College basketball has a lot of good people that cover the sport. But Cats throwing out Wyoming's ridiculous, I think. But usually a team that gets a lot of guys back does rightfully get expectations to do well. But that is very high for that school. Maybe top 40, but not top 25. Some soccer news. Pulisic to start for USMNT, as him and Pepe will play in today's friendly against Saudi Arabia. And how about this? The MLS schedule came out in the opener. The Galaxy and LAFC will start the MLS season next year at the Rose Bowl. So that is pretty cool to see. And that's always a great rivalry in Major League Soccer. All right, last but not least, my best bet of the day. Brought to you by FanDuel. It's so simple where I'm going for best bet. Yesterday's was a winner with the over in the Pittsburgh Cincinnati game. But my best bet today, I'm laying a run line with the Seattle Mariners on the verge of clinching. They are now plus 112 on the money line. On the run line. Oh my goodness. I feel so good about this, I'm laying a whole unit. A whole unit on the Seattle Mariners. Minus 1.5 at plus 112 against the Rangers. That's how great I feel about that pick. All right, that's it for today's show. I'll be back tomorrow recapping everything from today and look at everything tomorrow. We have Masked Singer and Survivor tomorrow. And obviously news and notes and best bet. And I believe we have a PGA event coming up. We do. So we will do the tee times for the Sanderson Farms Championship on the podcast tomorrow as well. Hope you guys have a great day, everyone.